My name is Aubrey Dameron. I am your mother. What do I say? I had a little incident in Costa Rica in October of 2020. I was there on vacation and I was bit by a fer-de-lance. From what I understand, it's one of the most aggressive snakes in the world, and it is extremely venomous. The bite causes death very frequently. Not a lot of tourists are bit, but there's a decent amount. But it mainly impacts rural farm workers and other individuals who are in nature and working. My friend and I were wanting to go on a trip, so we decided to travel to Costa Rica. So we were there to vacation for a week. It was just me and my friend Elisa. We went down to the coast in the Capos region, and we spent the first day there. We stayed in this great little bungalow resort. So it has kind of like the main resort, and then you walk down a path and there's these bungalows kind of spread out. And so we were staying in one of those. In October, it was getting dark around 5:30 there. We were heading back to our hotel to change clothes. So I'm walking down the path to our hotel to get to the bungalow, and my friend's just a couple of steps ahead of me. The path is not very well lit, so I'm fumbling with my phone trying to get the flashlight on. All of a sudden I feel something on my ankle, and I turned around and I see this snake sitting there on the step. And I'm like, Elisa, a snake bit me. Get a picture and go get help. She takes my phone and takes a picture of it. I look at the picture and it's completely blurry because she was shaking. So she runs past this super venomous snake to go get help. Meanwhile, the snake has curled up on the steps, so he's like right here, and he sticks his head up like this. So I'm just sitting there looking at the snake like 10 feet away, and he's eyeing me and I'm eyeing him, and I'm like, don't you move. Our tour guide and his friend come down, and I'll never forget this guy. He's like, oh my gosh, this is bad. This is really bad. You have to get to the hospital right now. No one's walking past here. So he's like, we'll go get the car. By this time, it's been a few minutes and I can feel something's not right. I started walking down a path in a way that looked like it might lead to the way out. I get to the top of the hill and all of a sudden I feel like sick to my stomach and really dizzy. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna sit right here for just a second. Next thing I know, I'm having fabulous dreams about our Costa Rican vacation. I'm like water rafting. It's fantastic. Then I'm like jerked out of this dream, and I wake up and I'm being yanked up by my feet, and everyone's yelling and screaming and freaking out, and Lisa's slapping my face, and she's like, you can't die, you have children. I just remember this, like, what in the world? So they had pulled up the rental car. They wake me up, get me upright. They're getting me in the car. Elisa sits behind me, and she's like, Aubrey, you have to stay awake. So she's shaking me. She's having me count. She's like, count to 100. So I count to 100. And if I count too slow, she's like, faster, count faster. Meanwhile, she's in the back and she's frantically talking to me and making sure that she can constantly hear me to make sure I don't pass out. And then the tour guide gets in the back seat next to Elisa, and he gets on the phone with the hospital. So he's on the phone with them, like telling them what's happened, making sure that they have someone ready to receive me and antivenom ready. The tour guide's friend is sitting in front driving our rental car down. I'm seeing headlights come at me, and I just remember, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And it's not going to be from the snake bite. We're going to go off the side of this mountain and we're going to have a head-on collision. As he's driving like a madman, Elisa's yelling behind me and shaking me and all of this, and this guy's talking frantically on the phone. And it gets wilder. So at some point, the police decide that we're driving like madmen and decide to pull us over. Thankfully, the police officer lets us go and gives us a siren escort. And we finally get to the clinic. They pull me in, like, all I remember is like being immediately from the car onto a gurney. And they're starting to give me an IV, I think, before I even get inside. So they give the IV in my arm and start the antivenom. The normal dose of antivenom is 5 to 10 vials. So they started me off with that. They check on me about 30 minutes later and give me, I guess, a second dose. They maxed me out on 20 vials of antivenom. They could not legally give me any more because your allergic reaction could kill you then. Meanwhile, I'm in a lot of pain. So I try to get a nurse's attention, and I'm like, hey, and they just walk past me. So I'm yelling at the poor nurses, and they're walking past me. Finally, I get someone's attention. They're like, there's nothing we can do for you. We've already maxed you out on morphine. And I'm like, can you give me something else? And she was like, no, if we give you any more, it will kill you. And I'm like, what about ibuprofen? She goes, ibuprofen's not gonna do anything. My ankle's just swelling up more and more. I'm doing everything to relieve the throbbing and the pain just a little bit. And it's horrible. You can't think about anything else. You can't focus. It was the most pain that I've ever experienced. I feel like my leg is literally going to explode and pop open. And apparently someone was looking at it and they're like, that can actually happen. Your leg can split open. It can swell so much that it kills all of your vascular system and all your organs and tissues because the swelling just crushes everything. If we hadn't had those friends with us who knew what to do and knew where to take me and that I had to get there fast, I probably would have died. The specialist comes in. He doesn't even get through the doorway. Like, he stands at the door and looks at me from like 10 feet away, and he's like, we will cut your leg open now. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm in a foreign country in Central America. You know, like, this guy's about to slice my leg open. I remember two distinct and opposite feelings at the same time. Complete horror that he's about to slice my leg open. I mean, not being in a foreign country, that's bad enough. Like, what do you mean you're gonna slice my leg open? And second, pure ecstasy. He's going to knock me out. I'm pretty sure that he's gonna put me under to slice my leg open. And I'm like, I don't care what you do to me if you get me out of this pain. They go in and prep me in all of this. And they put me under, and I wake up, and the doctor's standing there, and he's like, how do you feel? I say, you know what? From right here down, it feels fine. But like from the calf up, it still hurts really bad. He goes, we will have to do it again. And he walks off. We have to do it again. So I was like, okay. So they come back in, prep me, I get put back under. But at some point, he came back and talked to me about it and explained that they had to relieve the pressure to not kill everything inside. So that it didn't crush all my entire leg, and then they would have had to amputate my leg if they didn't do the fasciotomy. So the fasciotomy is where they cut you open to release the pressure. So they cut me open from just above my pinky toe all the way up to my knee. So anyway, it was just chaos, and you know, I can't understand what's going on. Meanwhile, Elisa has worked out with my surgeon to get me to a private hospital in San Jose. They load me up, so like put me on the different bed and like strap me in, and it's the one that can go in the ambulance. So then they unload me from the ambulance onto this little bitty airplane. This, you know, paramedic that is on the care flight with me again, super cute, young, nice guy. So he loads me on, and the little care flight stretcher board that they put you on in the plane, it kind of leans like this. So I'm strapped in, but I kind of feel like I'm about to fall the whole time. So the poor little guy, he's like trying to like kind of hold me on the whole time. So meanwhile, Lisa gets on with me, and this is a little bitty plane. Like, there's room for like the pilot and maybe his co-pilot up front. I don't remember if there was a co-pilot there. And then my stretcher, and then my paramedic, and then Elisa's in the back, and that's the extent of the plane. It's pretty little. So we take off, and Elisa gets airsick. And so the paramedics then try to take care of her, and she's like, no, I'll be fine. Just take care of my friend. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm just hanging out right here. So the little paramedic guy is taking care of both of us. It was just kind of comical, some of the things that went on. And in that situation, you can't do anything but just find the humor in it to keep your own sanity. I mean, yes, it's tragic and scary at the same time. There are some funny moments. I remember asking them, how's my leg? Oh, it's fine. They never told me that I was at risk of dying. They never told me that I was at risk of losing my leg. And so I stayed very positive and thought I was going home in a week. Also, if I'd have thought I was going to lose my leg or die, I probably would have been totally freaked out and responded more poorly to the treatment and not healed as well. So I think I'm going home in a week. I go up to my room, and they said, you're going to be going to surgery shortly. We're going to have to go in and take out the dead tissue. I don't think I realized it at this time, but I was going to have surgeries every other day for about 10 days. They had to go out and take more and more tissue out. I have these really incredible pictures that they took. It's crazy because you look at it and it looks like, I don't know if you ever saw back in the no smoking campaigns, or what they would do, this is a normal lung, this is a lung that smokes, you know, you see like the nice healthy pink lung and then the black ugly tar filled lung. And so that's kind of what my leg looked like. I felt like it was this is a good leg, and my picture, this is a leg on venom. The orthopedic surgeon who was handling my surgeries came in and was like, we're going to have to remove your tendons. He would come and talk to me like right as I'm waking up from anesthesia. So I'm like disoriented and confused, and I'm like, what was that? But he came in at one point and he was like, your tendons are dead, we're going to have to remove them. I'm like, I'm no medical doctor, but I'm pretty sure that's bad. I'm like, well, can you just remove part of them? He's like, no, they're all dead. And if you see this picture, you see it, and there you can see the tendons. They look like little ropes from like going through your foot to each toe. And they go white, and then it's all black, and then turns white again. Yeah, okay. He's like, but we only have to do the ones to the 4 little toes. We think we can keep your big toe, and that's the most important for walking. I was like, well, okay, well, that sounds positive. We're gonna be happy if you can just walk again. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound so good. Because he's just like, we're trying to put your foot back together. Put me back together and I'll get back home and go about my business. I had no concept of the trauma that my leg had been through, and like it ended up being more than a year of healing. So it was probably 6 months until I even got the wound closed. They put a wound vac on it. And so it's like this, I don't know, big machine that's pretty heavy that like sucks the fluid out so that it can heal better. And the pressure supposedly helps the circulation to help it heal faster too. So I have this vacuum attached to my leg with a sponge that's in the wound and then on all this. Day 2 or 3 in the hospital, he's like, if you start itching, he goes, most people have an allergic reaction to any antivenom. He goes, you had a lot of antivenom. In fact, you maxed out the antivenom. He goes, you will have a reaction. I don't know how severe it will be, but you will have a reaction to the antivenom. I'm like, ah. So he's like, when you start itching, don't worry. I will give you something for it. It will be fine. So sure enough, I think, I don't know, 7 to 10 days in, all of a sudden, like, I'm realizing my back's itchy. And then like it's getting more itchy to the point where I'm like, someone give me a brush, and I'm like gonna claw my skin to death. And so yeah, so I let the nurse know, and she's like, yes, you are having the allergic reaction. We will get some medication. So one anesthesiologist, and I'm like, I'm in so much pain. Like, I need you to do something. He's like, he goes, I've given you so much morphine. If I give you any more, your heart will stop. And I'm like, but I'm in so much pain, I can't stand it. He goes, I can't give you any more. And I'm like, you have to do something. He's like, it will kill you. I'm like, well, I will kill you if you don't give me something. Finally, I got to the point where they had removed enough tissue that they were going to try to put me back together. And that was the thing. They had to remove all the dead tissue, wait till it stopped draining too much fluid so that they could do a skin graft and put me back together, because they said it wasn't safe to fly me home until my wound was closed, or mostly closed. So that was like the big event. So I was always like, could you close me back up? And they'd be like, not yet. And then even the closing back up was a process. So like, I think maybe 2.5 weeks in, he was like, we were able to close just a little bit. You know, we got some of the under layer closed back up. And they're like, it's gonna be a process. So we got to close the first layers, and then we can do more layers. And then the last layer was like the plastic surgery, where they would take a skin graft from my thigh and put it on my ankle. I go in for the skin graft, and they had to take a pretty big section of skin off my thigh. It was pretty significant. And they put it over the wound, and then they like staple it on, and then they put this like foamy stuff for the wound vac over it to drain all the fluid off as it's healing. So they did warn me that the skin graft can be pretty painful. So he said it's not dangerous, it's superficial, but it exposes all those nerves. And I will say it was extremely painful. So, I mean, it's just on fire, hurting. And I'm like, it's one of those where like I'm gripping just to like every muscle in my body is tense because I'm just trying to like, you know, push against the pain, but it's just crushing pain. But what happened was all the fluid made the dressing just like fall off. And they want to keep it covered because it will heal better and scar less, and it won't get an infection. So my doctor comes in the next morning, and Chloe was doing her homework on the computer, and he's like, oh, we need to change this dressing. He's like, it will be uncomfortable. I'm like, what do you mean by that? It's like, it's gonna hurt. I'm like, don't worry, I'll put some lidocaine on it. But when I put the lidocaine on, it will sting a bit. So, you know, at this point, it's like, you don't have a choice. This needs to be changed. So, okay. So I'm gearing myself up. Chloe's meanwhile like in class on Zoom, and so he's starting to you know, peel the dressing off, and the sticky it's slid, so some of the sticky is on the exposed nerves of the skin. So when he pulls it, it's stuck to these exposed nerves, and I'm in extreme pain. This was this. I don't know which one was worse, the initial swelling of the snake bite or this, but this was the other most painful time. This one was more acute and all at once, because when he's pulling this off, I felt like I was coming off of that table. Like, it was just, and Chloe's face went like, she went beet red and then like pale white. I mean, I'm getting sick to my stomach just talking about it. It hurts so bad. So they got that put back together. They got that bandaged up, and I think I had to have that changed a couple more. I think I had to have it changed daily, and none of it was fun. That was a painful healing process.